So in this part we should start making the tiles fall to the ground whenever the player is done running on them. So to do that we could go back into our tile script, I think, because I think I want to do it here, start some functionality that makes it fall down. So right away I would think that we should start making it fall down with gravity. So if we look at a tile here, play our game, see that we could actually just I don't know, does it have a rigid body on? No, it doesn't. So I would think right away we could take, for example, add a rigid body to all our tiles here and then make them fall like this whenever our player runs over them. So let's just try that. Let's go to our prefabs and add a rigid body to this one and add a rigid body to this one. So now they're just gonna fall right away because the gravity is set already. So if we play this, we'll spawn them and they'll just fall to the ground like this. And we don't need them to fall like this because they shouldn't fall onto the player has run over them. So if we would put this is kinematic, which means that the Unity physics engine doesn't change the rigid body right away by itself, but we need to make some scripting to change this rigid body. So this is a smart way just to make sure that it doesn't fall. So rigid body is kinematic. So from our script we should basically be able to say when our player runs through this, let's say he runs over this one, well then we could just go to our script and say, well, it's not kinematic anymore and it falls to the ground. We could also just disable the gravity basically. Actually I don't think we could disable the gravity, because if we would do like this, I guess he would push it down actually. Yeah, as you can see now it starts falling by itself actually, but that's not the way we want it to fall, because we want to decide when it should fall, like how long after the player has been on it that it should fall to the ground. So let's just keep it at use gravity and is kinematic. So if we jump back into our script, we could make some functionality to make it fall down, and I actually think I want to make a coroutine that makes it fall down. And a coroutine is something that can run at the same time as the other functionality. So you start the coroutine and it basically just get run in the background, kinda. It's not a thread, but it's just running by itself, and we can stop the coroutine in the middle of it and wait for some seconds and then continue the execution. So I'm gonna make a I enumerator. Sorry, I'm gonna write I enumerator, if I could spell. I enumerator fall down. So, and then I'm gonna wait for some seconds before I start falling down. So I'm gonna write yield return new wait for seconds, and this is the amount of seconds that the routine should stop before it executes the rest. So I can make a, let's say, public fall delay, float, sorry, fall delay, and this fall delay, basically I don't need to make it private, I'm just gonna make it private, sorry, and I'm gonna set it as 2 seconds from the get-go, because then all the tiles has the same delay. I don't need to set it outside in the inspector. So fall delay 2, and I'm gonna use fall delay here, and when the fall delay is over I'm gonna say get component rigid body is kinematic false, fall delay now false, there we go. So then I start falling, like when my player has run over the tile, I would like to say, well, I'm gonna start the fall down coroutine. When that happens, I'm gonna wait some seconds, and then I'm gonna say, well, my rigid body is kinematic, which means that it will fall to the ground. So after I have spawned a new tile, I would say start coroutine to start this, fall down. There we go. And if we save this and jump back in here, let's have a look and see what happens. Run over these tiles and they start falling down after those 2 seconds. I think those 2 seconds are kind of long. Let's try to say 1.5 seconds or something. Maybe that's a little more appropriate. And we need to make an F after this to make sure that it's a float. Let's go again. It's still kind of slow, but yeah, okay. As you can see, they start falling to the ground. We could just put it at 1 second or something, that delay. But you can see that they fall. But right now, all our cubes are still here. And we keep making more and more cubes, and you can see our hierarchy here gets smaller and smaller because we keep adding more cubes. So we need to contain these cubes somehow and make sure that we only make a set amount or something, so that we don't make a million cubes in the end of our game and our game is going to get slower and slower. So I'm going to add 2 collections to my game. If we jump into our what is it called, tile manager, then I want to contain my tiles in some collections, because when I add the tiles in the beginning, I want to put them into something so that I can contain them there, and then when I need to use them again later, I can just take them from that collection instead of just deleting them. I could also put some code that says when the tile has fallen for a while, just destroy it. But if I destroy it, then I would need to make a new tile later, and that's kind of expensive. So instead I'm just going to reuse them. So I'm going to use something called a stack, and a stack is a collection, like a stack of papers. So you can put something into that stack and then you can take it up again. So I'm just going to show you here, private stack, and it should contain game object. So if you get this error here, red squishy line, you can right click on it if you have Visual Studio and click resolve and click using system collections.generics, and then this red squishy line disappears. So what just happened, if you don't have Visual Studio and you can't do this, then you can go up here and write using system.collections.generic, because if I remove this one, then this line appears again, because it the stack is in this namespace here where we need it. So we need to include this namespace to be able to use the stack in our game. And I'm gonna call this lift tiles. And I need to instantiate this right away, so new stack game object. And this part here where I instantiate it makes sure that we don't get an error, because here I define a variable, lift tiles, and here I asked the computer for some memory so that I can save something in my stack. If I didn't do this, then it wouldn't work. And I'm gonna copy this and just paste that and call it top tiles. So how does that stack work? Well, as the name says, it's a stack, like a stack of book and a stack of paper. So if I would add something to my stack, I would write lift tiles, for example, dot push. So push pushes something on top of the stack. Like you take a book and put it on the table. If you push some game object, what did we have? Do we have some game object? We have a current tile, for example. That pushes something to the top of the stack. And if I later would say, well, I have another tile, like my game object, second object, something, and I say lift tiles dot push second, well, then my second object would be, now it's because it's not set to anything, say null. So now my second object would be on top of the current tile. So it puts it like a stack of papers on the table. You put one down and then you put the next one on top of it. So if you need to remove something from the stack, well, then you say lift tiles dot pop, and that removes the last item I added to the stack, which means second would be removed now and returned. So I could get it by saying game object last removed equals this. So now I would pop my stack to remove second, and second would be equal to last remove would be equal to second here. if I want to look into the stack without removing anything from it, I can say lift tiles dot peek, and peek just peeks on the top item, so it peeks on second without removing it, so I can check what is there in the top, and then I can access all the stuff on that second object here, for example. So that's just the basics of a what a stack is. I have a tutorial, an inventory tutorial, where I illustrate what a stack is way better, and it also illustrates it visually, so you can get an idea of how the stacks works and everything. But now we have these two stacks, and one stack is for the lift tiles and another stack is for all the top tiles. So let's put these two stacks to use now. So we should make a new function that is called create tiles, because spawn tiles will spawn a tile somewhere in our game world, and the create tiles function will actually create the tiles for us so that we can take them and spawn them later. So let's go here and write a public void create tiles, and this function we can tell how many tiles we should create of each. So int amount, and then we're going to make a for loop that runs the amount of times that we give this function, and then we're going to make another for loop that also runs the amount of times. So I'm just doing this to make sure that nothing, we can actually use one for loop. We can always change that if it gives us problems later. So we're going to say lift tiles dot push, because that's how we add something to it, instantiate. We're going to instantiate a new tile, and we're going to say tile prefabs 0 to get a lift tile. Then we're going to close this, and we're going to do the exact same thing just with top tiles that push instantiate top tile, and we need to make them inactive from the get-go, because there's no point in having them visible from the start, because they are just going to spawn at some random location in the beginning. So to make sure that our tiles doesn't interfere with the other tiles when they just get created, and they won't be visible until we take them in use in the spawn tile function, we can say top tiles dot peek just to look inside the stack, and say set active to false. And we can do the exact same thing with our lift tiles. Peek set active false with a large T, of course, the capital T here. There we go. So now we can create our tiles. Now that we can create them, we of course also need to be able to take these tiles and put them in our game world. So we can go to our spawn tile function, and here we can, and in here we need to make sure that we have enough tiles. So first of all, we need to check if we have some tiles to take from before we try to spawn them. So we're going to make an if statement that says if lift tiles that count is larger than 0, or is equal to 0, sorry, or if top tiles that count equals 0, well, then we need to create some more tiles. Oh, sorry, equals 0 here. Create tiles 10. So if one of the lists are empty, we're basically just going to make 10 more tiles of each. So we're going to make 20 tiles just to make sure we have some to take from. So before we just added everything to our lists or our stacks, so now we need to take them from the stacks. So instead of doing this current tile thing where we instantiate it and add the current tile, well, then we need to start taking from those two stacks here. So if our random index equals 0, well, then we have a lift tile as we figured out earlier. So our game object temporary equals lift tiles.pop, and as I told you earlier, pop removes the tile from the lift tiles stack, and then we're gonna set it active. So temporary.set active true, because before we set them all to false, so now it's true. And then we're gonna set temporary.transform.position equals, my current tile, the transform dot get child 0 dot transform dot get child 0. I guess that's attach point, so that's random index, of course, dot position. So the position of the new, I'm taking an object out of the stack and I'm setting the position to the current tiles attach point that fits with the current tile, and this should be 0 or 1. So according to that, well, then we're going to use the right attach point to place it to the left or on top of it. So out come this else. We have to do the exact same thing, just from the top tile. So we can actually take this, copy it, and paste it down here. Let's just make else if, just to make sure, if our random index equals 1. Then we have to do all this. So we're gonna pop from top tiles, and else everything should be identical. So the only difference is that we pop it from our top tiles instead of popping it from our left tiles. And one more thing we need to make sure that our current tile changes, so that every time we add a new tile, our current tile is that one, so we know where to add the next tile. So our current tile should be equal to temporary, and the same goes down here, current tile equals temporary. There we go. So now we should be able to spawn some tiles. Let's see, spawn tile 50 times, and we create, if we say create tiles, we make 100 of each or something. Then we can test if it works, see if we need to fix something. Boom. So it looks like we just created a lot of tiles here. And let's try to run the game to see if we get any exceptions or something. It looks like it works perfectly. It keeps creating tiles for us, and or it keeps taking the old tiles. So you can see the level is still unending here. Okay, so we also need to handle the bricks or the tiles that are falling to the ground somehow, and we need to handle that inside our fall down function in our tile script here, because right now we are just setting it to fall down, and we're never setting this is kinematic to false again, because then when we reuse them, they're gonna fall right away. We can actually just give it a go here. Let's say that we want to create 20 tiles. We're gonna spawn 10 from the get-go. I shouldn't run it like that. Oopsie. Should just run it in Unity. Just bad reflex. Let's see if we go back here. Then we should end up in a something where all the tiles are just falling from us. Let's see if we do that. And we reuse them. Oh yeah, okay, we keep using new ones, of course, so we're not gonna end up in what I first thought, sorry. The thing is that we're never adding our tiles back to sorry, I'm a little confused right now. There we go. We're never adding our tiles to the stacks again, left tiles here and top tiles when we have used them once. So we end in this one where we say, well, if we have 0 of one of them and 0 of the other, well, then we're gonna create some more. So we just keep creating them. So our recycling doesn't work yet. So we're not recycling them yet. To recycle them, we need to add some functionality where I came from in here in our fall down. Sorry, I just messed a little around in it. Hope it's still understandable. So when a tile starts falling down, we need to make sure that it gets recycled. And we can say yield return new, wait for seconds, and we want to recycle this tile after 2 seconds. So when it has been falling for 2 seconds, then we are going to recycle it. And how are we going to recycle it? Well, we're going to switch on the game object dot transform dot get child 0 dot tag. So basically we're going to look at, we have spawned a tile here, and we're going to look at the child's tag here, or actually we can also just look at our name of our tile, because I actually called this left tile and I called the other one top tile. So we can actually jump back into a script here and say switch and game object dot name, game object dot name, because the tile script here is attached to the tile itself. So I should be able to just access the name of it by saying switch from game object dot name. Then I can say, well, if the case is that the name is left tile, break, then I want to do something. And if the case is that the colon there, if the case name is top tile, then I want to do something else. So if the case is the tile is left tile, well, then I want to take the tile and put it in the left tile stack. And if it's a top tile, well, then I'm gonna take the tile and put it in the top tile stack. As easy as that. I just need to see something. What are the names actually when we instantiate them? So as you can see here, when we create a tile, the name is left tile clone hereafter. So it's not gonna react on left tile. So we can change the name. If we jump into our tile manager, here where we created, we're creating the tiles, we can say that top tiles dot peak dot name equals top tile, and we can say left tiles peak dot name equals left tile. And I think I need to do this before I set them to inactive, just to be sure that it works. So this basically takes the tile. When we create a tile, we take it and then we change the name of it to top tile and to left tile. So let's save and see how it looks in Unity now. So now you can see they have the correct name, all of them, without having this clone after it. So now our switch case in here should actually work because it looks at left tile and top tile. So if it's a left tile, we need to add it to our left tile stack. And right now I can't access the left tile stack because it's private. So I need to add a property so I can access it by right-clicking, clicking refactor, encapsulate field, and right-clicking on top tiles, refactor, and encapsulate field. So when I've done that, you can see that there's a public property here that accesses it. And if you don't have Visual Studio, as always, just write this code by yourself. You can easily write it if you don't, if you can't do that. In here, I'm gonna say, what is it called? Tile manager dot instance dot left tiles dot push game object. So I'm gonna push this game object, this tile, to the stack so it's falling down. When it's done falling, I'm gonna add it back to the left tile stack so that I can reuse it at some point. And then I'm gonna say game object dot get component rigid body is kinematic true, so that it doesn't keep falling. If I wouldn't do this, then our game objects would keep falling. I'm actually going to show it in a few seconds so we can see why we're doing this. Let's see, we can then say game object.set active. false, so it shouldn't be active. There we go. And I can copy this and paste it down here, and I want to do the exact same thing. The only thing that is different is that I'm gonna add it to the top tiles instead. So now I'm actually making sure that my objects are getting re-added to this list. So if I would outcomment this, if I hit the right keys here and here, you'll see what happens. I save this and go back into Unity and run my game. Let's see if we can recycle these things. Gonna fall. As you can see, they start falling now, all my bricks, and they're not coming up here anymore because they're getting spawned and they're falling right away. It was hard to see. We can try again, because we never said that our what is it called? Our rigid body is kinematic. As you can see here, now they start falling, all of them. So what we need to do is to remove this and save, and we need to go back in here. And now they should be able to recycle without any problems. And as you can see now, they stop falling right away, as you can see here. So as you can see, there is another problem here. They start stacking up and stuff, and that's because they're not locked in the rigid body, as you can see here. As we did with our player, we need to freeze the position and rotation of them, because as you saw before, we got a very crazy stack of objects suddenly. If we keep doing this, see if we can hit it again. You can also see some of them are flying to the sides and everything. Here we get some weird things because some of them are stacking on each other, and yeah, and we get some weird formations here because they hit each other and push each other out of the way, as you can see here. So we get some pretty interesting levels. To fix this, we need to freeze the position and rotation on all axes except the Y. So we need to put it like this, because if we freeze it on Y, of course, then we can't fall down. So click on your left tile, prefab, and select all the constraints here except Y, and click on the top tile and do the exact same thing. So if we run it now, we should end up in a situation where we don't get all those weird things. Let's try. See that it's creating our level just in front of us, and as you can see here, they're not pushing each other right away and pushing each other around. So now we actually have a great level that recycles the old tiles, and it also randomizes itself without any problems, as you can see here. So just to make it better, we should go up here and say that in our tile manager, we should make sure that we are creating, let's say we spawn 50 from the get-go and we create 100 tiles, so we have something to take from. So that was the part about spawning the level randomly and recycling the tiles. In the next part, we'll be looking at how we can create power-ups, or not power-ups, but those point things, because in ZigZag we have those purple diamonds that the player can take, and when the player takes those diamonds, then he will gain some extra points.